Hey, imagine this. You're standing in your own kitchen, holding a check for $125,000, money you earned, money that's yours, and your mother walks in without saying hello. She just points at it. Your sister is shaking beside her, desperate. And in that moment, you realize you're not a daughter to them. You're an insurance policy they're finally cashing in. That's where my story starts. My name is Amelia, and I'm a senior risk analyst. That means companies pay me 6 figures a year to look at disasters waiting to happen and tell them exactly when everything falls apart. I look for cracks in foundations. I look for liabilities hidden in fine print. I'm trained to see what people are trying to hide. But for 29 years, I'd been ignoring the biggest liability in my own life, my family. Sarah had just gotten an audit notice for Monday morning. There was a $125,000 hole in her company's bank account. My parents didn't come to celebrate my whistleblower payout. They came to liquidate me to save her. To understand why I didn't just throw them out, you have to understand how my family actually worked. I call it the parasitic symbiosis theory. In nature, some organisms can't survive on their own. They need a host. In our house, Sarah was the host, the beautiful, shining face the world was supposed to see. She was going to be famous. She was going to marry rich. She was going to put our last name on a billboard. My parents were the immune system, constantly fighting off anything that might make Sarah uncomfortable. And me, I was the liver. My only purpose was to filter out the toxins so the rest of the body didn't get sick. I was designed to absorb the poison so Sarah could stay pretty. They didn't see themselves as evil. That's the terrifying part. They genuinely believed that sacrificing me to save her was a biological necessity. To them, it wasn't cruelty, it was survival. I remember exactly when I understood this, even if I didn't have the words for it back then. It was 11 years ago. I was 18. I'd just come home from checking the mail, my hands trembling because I was holding a thick envelope from an Ivy League university. I opened it on the porch. I got in. Not only did I get in, but I'd secured a partial scholarship. It was the proudest moment of my life. I walked into the kitchen beaming, ready to share the news. But before I could speak, I saw a cake on the table. It said, "Congratulations, Sarah," in bright pink icing. Sarah had just been accepted into a local modeling academy, a 6-week course that cost more than a year of my tuition. My father took the envelope from my hand. He didn't smile. He didn't hug me. He read the acceptance letter, sighed, and set it down next to the dirty dishes. He told me we had to be realistic. He said they couldn't afford to send me halfway across the country. Even with the scholarship, he said the family resources had to go where the highest return on investment was. 2 days later, there was a brand new BMW convertible in the driveway, pearl white with tan leather seats. My mother told me it was necessary for Sarah's image. She said Sarah couldn't show up to auditions in a beat-up sedan because appearances mattered. That car cost $45,000. That was my college fund. That was the money I'd earned working summers since I was 14, mixed with the savings my grandmother had left for my education. They liquidated my future to buy Sarah a prop. I didn't go to the Ivy League. I went to a state school 40 minutes away. I worked the night shift at a warehouse loading trucks until my back felt like it was made of broken glass, just to pay for my textbooks. I graduated with honors, debt, and a spine made of steel. Sarah crashed the BMW 3 months later. She walked away without a scratch, and my father just bought her another one. They broke me back then. They taught me that my dreams were convertible currency for Sarah's whims. But looking at them now, 10 years later, I realized something fundamental had changed. The liver was tired of filtering poison. Sarah wasn't a rising star anymore. She was a 32-year-old fraud with a failing startup and a felony hanging over her head. And I wasn't the 18-year-old girl crying over a rejection letter. I was the person who knew where all the bodies were buried because I was the one forced to dig the graves. Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek. A perfect, practiced motion. She told me she just needed a bridge loan. She promised she'd pay me back after her next round of funding. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie because I'd pulled her credit report an hour before they arrived. She was maxed out. She was drowning, and she wanted to stand on my head to breathe. I looked at my father. He was tapping his foot, impatient, waiting for me to do my job and filter this problem away. He thought he was looking at the same daughter he'd bullied for 3 decades. He didn't realize he was looking at a risk analyst who'd just decided to liquidate the liability. I let my shoulders slump. It was a calculated physical collapse. The exact posture of the defeated daughter they were used to seeing. I put my head in my hands and let out a shaky breath. I needed them to believe I was breaking, not plotting. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, I'll do it. I can't let you go to prison, Sarah." The tension in the room snapped like a cut wire. My mother let out a long sigh, practically deflating with relief. My father leaned back, his face relaxing into that smug expression of a man who'd successfully disciplined an unruly employee. Sarah stopped pacing and looked at me with wet, grateful eyes. "But we have a problem," I said, my voice rising in panic. I stood up and grabbed my laptop. "I can't just wire $125,000 to your personal account. The IRS algorithms will flag a transfer that size immediately. If they freeze my accounts for a review, the money won't get to you by Monday. You'll miss the audit deadline. Sarah's face went pale again. I can fix it, I said, typing furiously. But we have to document it correctly. If I send this as a personal loan, federal law requires me to charge you a minimum interest rate. If I don't, the IRS counts it as a gift and we both get hit with a 40% gift tax. That's $50,000 gone. My father stood up. We're not paying $50,000 in taxes. Figure it out. There is one loophole, I said, turning the screen slightly away from them so they couldn't see my hands shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. If we classify this payment as third-party restitution, it's tax-exempt. Basically, I'm not loaning you money, I'm covering a debt you owe to your company to correct an accounting error. I looked at Sarah. But for that to work, you have to admit the error in writing. You have to verify that the withdrawal from your company was, let's call it, inadvertent. If you sign a statement saying you took the money by mistake and this is a correction, the IRS treats it as a non-event. No tax, no interest. It was the oldest trick in the risk analyst handbook. Appeal to a criminal's greed and they'll ignore their survival instinct. Sarah didn't see a confession. She saw a way to save money. I opened DocuSign. I drafted a simple one-page affidavit. It looked boring. It looked like standard tax compliance paperwork, but in the center of the page, under the section labeled Reason for Disbursement, I left a blank text box. I emailed the link to her phone. Okay, I said, just fill in the reason field. Make sure you use the words inadvertent withdrawal so it looks like an accident, not theft. Then sign it. Sarah's phone pinged. She opened the email. She didn't hesitate. She didn't call a lawyer. She tapped the screen, her thumbs flying over the keyboard. She was so focused on avoiding the tax bill that she didn't realize what she was actually doing. She typed, repayment of inadvertent withdrawal from company funds to avoid audit discrepancy. She pressed sign. A moment later, my laptop chimed. Document completed. I opened the PDF. There it was, her digital signature, time-stamped, IP-tracked, and legally binding under penalty of perjury. She had just confessed to felony embezzlement. She'd admitted she took the money, admitted it was company funds, and admitted she was trying to cover it up. It's done, Sarah, she said, looking up at me. Now transfer the money. I need an hour for the funds to clear the holding account, I lied. Go home, get some sleep. I'll wire it first thing in the morning. They left 5 minutes later. My mother hugged me on the way out, whispering that I was a good girl. They walked out into the rain, convinced they had won. I locked the door, slid the deadbolt home, and looked at the PDF on my screen. I didn't send the money. I saved the file to 3 different cloud servers. I had the bait. Now I needed to close the trap. I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, the adrenaline from the DocuSign trap slowly fading into cold, hard focus. I had the confession. Now I needed to see the full extent of the damage. I logged into the credit bureaus. I usually checked my score once a year, but I'd never looked at the detailed authorized user history. I scrolled past my student loans, past my car payments, and then I stopped. There they were, 3 credit cards I'd never touched. One opened when I was 19, another at 22, the last one just 6 months ago. The total balance was $45,000. My parents hadn't just stolen my college fund. They'd been wearing my credit score like a stolen coat for a decade. They'd added themselves as authorized users to accounts under my name, intercepted the mail, and lived a lifestyle they couldn't afford on my future. Every vacation, every nice dinner, every gift they gave Sarah, I'd paid for it. They weren't just parasites. They were identity thieves. I printed the statements. I added them to the file. Then the room lit up with blue and red flashes. I looked out the window. 2 police cruisers were screeching to a halt at my curb. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. We're doing this for your own good. They had called 911. They weren't waiting for the money anymore. They were going for the nuclear option, an involuntary psychiatric hold. If they could get the police to drag me out of my house in handcuffs, screaming and crying, they could file for emergency conservatorship by morning. They could seize my accounts to manage my assets while I was locked away. It was the ultimate gaslighting move. They expected me to be the hysterical daughter. They expected me to open the door crying, shouting about betrayal, looking like the unstable woman they'd described to the dispatcher. I didn't panic. I initiated what I call the contrast protocol. I ran to my closet. I threw on my navy blazer. I put on my glasses. I put on my professional headset. I opened my laptop and started a Zoom meeting with myself, maximizing a spreadsheet on the screen so it reflected in my glasses. I grabbed a clipboard. When the pounding started on the door, I didn't run. I walked. I opened the door mid-sentence, speaking into my headset. Look, the risk mitigation coefficients are off. We need to restructure the debt before Q3. I looked at the 2 officers standing there, hands on their holsters, ready to tackle a maniac. I tapped my headset, looking annoyed but polite. Officers, can I help you? I'm in the middle of a conference call with Tokyo. The officers froze. They looked at me, calm, dressed for business, holding a clipboard, discussing finance. Then they looked over their shoulders at the driveway. My mother was there, sobbing theatrically into my father's shoulder. Sarah was screaming that I had a gun and was going to hurt myself. The contrast was violent. Inside the house, a composed professional. Outside, a chaotic screaming circus. "Ma'am," the older officer said, his hand moving away from his gun. "We received a call about a suicidal individual with a weapon." "A weapon?" I laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "Officer, the only weapon I have is a quarterly earnings report. My family is struggling financially. I refuse to give them a loan tonight. I assume this is their retaliation." I stepped back to let them see the apartment. It was clean. It was quiet. My tea was still steaming on the table. The officer looked back at my parents, who were now yelling at the neighbors. He shook his head. He pulled out his notepad. "I apologize for the disturbance, ma'am. We'll clear this as a false report." "Thank you," I said. "Please ask them to leave my property." I watched from the window as the police spoke to my parents. I saw my father's face turn purple. I saw Sarah stomp her foot. They were told to leave or face arrest for misuse of emergency services. They drove away defeated. I closed the blinds. My hands were steady. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd saved 3 years ago. "Mr. Vance," I said when he answered. "It's Amelia. The contrast protocol worked." "Good," he said. His voice was gravel and shark skin. "Are we ready for the next step?" "Yes, I need you to check the date on the LLC filing. I'm looking at it now." "You bought the tax lien certificate on your parents' house exactly 3 years ago yesterday," Vance said. "The statutory redemption period expired at midnight." I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since I was 18. "File the deed," I said. "I don't just want the money, I want the roof." 2 days later, I stepped into the lobby of Vance & Associates on the 45th floor of a downtown glass tower. Freezing air, marble floors, my heels clicking like a countdown. My family demanded this meeting. After the police debacle, they'd hired a strip mall attorney who filed an emergency conservatorship petition claiming I was erratic and a danger to myself, trying to get a judge to hand them control of my finances immediately. Mr. Vance intervened, blocked the emergency hearing, and forced them into binding private arbitration first to settle matters discreetly. They thought discreet meant I'd surrender. They thought I'd sign papers, hand over a check, apologize. They didn't realize they were walking into a kill box. I opened the heavy oak door to a windowless, soundproof conference room that smelled like lemon polish and old money. A long mahogany table sat in the center. They were already there. My father at the head, lounging like he owned the building. My mother beside him, purse clenched, wearing her concerned mother mask. Sarah looked glossy in a silk blouse, but her leg bounced. She knew the audit on Monday put her 48 hours from handcuffs if I didn't sign. Mr. Vance sat at the far end like a shark in a 3-piece suit. Beside him, a court reporter hovered over a steno machine. Their exhausted lawyer stood. "Ah, Amelia, the conservatorship agreement is ready. Your father as financial guardian and your sister as—" I walked past him, pulled out the chair opposite my father, and sat. No hello, no explanation. I placed one thin file folder on the table. "Where's the check?" my father demanded. "We're not here for a check," I said calmly. "We're here to correct the record." Sarah snapped that I was unstable and had called the police on myself. My mother dabbed a dry eye, insisting they only wanted to protect me. Mr. Vance cleared his throat. "Everything said in this room is under oath and on the record. Proceed." They didn't flinch. The court reporter asked for names. Sarah gave hers, smooth and practiced, then launched in. She said I'd struggled for a long time, had delusional episodes, promised her money for business expansion, then became erratic. They needed to stabilize my assets before I harmed myself. My father nodded. "She imagines things," he said. Click, click, click. The stenographer etched every lie into the permanent record. Perjury, exactly as I'd planned. When Sarah finished swearing the money was for business expansion and that I'd offered it, Mr. Vance pressed a button. The projector lit up. "Exhibit A," he said. A blown-up DocuSign affidavit, highlighted in yellow. Reason for disbursement: repayment of inadvertent withdrawal from company funds to avoid audit discrepancy. The room went silent. "Miss Miller," Vance said mildly, "why did you testify these funds were for business expansion when you signed a sworn affidavit stating they were to repay embezzled funds?" Sarah stopped breathing. Color drained from her face. She stammered, then tried. "She told me to write that it was a tax thing." "So you're admitting tax fraud," Vance said. "Or admitting perjury." She snapped shut. Vance clicked again. Exhibit B. A timeline. 10 years of credit card statements. MX Gold. Chase Sapphire. Discover. All opened in my name. Signatures resembling my mother's handwriting. Charges for vacations I never took. Clothes I never wore. A car I never drove. $45,000 in unauthorized debt, Vance said. Federal identity theft. Wire fraud. Mail fraud. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on the last 5 years. My mother squeaked and grabbed my father's arm. He turned purple and shouted, They raised you. We were entitled to. You are entitled to nothing, Vance cut in. You stole her identity. That carries a mandatory minimum sentence in federal prison. My father shrank in his chair. Vance clicked once more. Exhibit C. A deed. A tax lien deed. That's my house, my father whispered. Look at the owner, I said evenly. EC Holdings LLC. I bought the tax debt on your house 3 years ago through a shell company. I paid the back taxes and waited. The 3-year redemption period. You didn't pay it back. It expired yesterday at midnight. I leaned forward. I didn't pay your mortgage, Dad. I foreclosed. I own the roof over your heads. You're trespassing. Then the screaming. My father lunging. Sarah reaching for the laptop like breaking the screen could break the truth. My mother wailing about family while the court reporter captured every threat and slip. Sit down, Mr. Vance roared. And they did, small and terrified. He slid a thick final document across the table. This is a confession of judgment and a voluntary restraining order, I said. I'm pointing to the signature lines. You admit the $45,000 in identity theft debt. You vacate the house, my house, within 7 days. Permanent no contact. Come within 500 feet of me or my workplace, you go to jail. And if you don't sign? Sarah whispered. What if we don't sign? Then I email Exhibit A to the district attorney, I said, finger hovering over enter, and Exhibit B to the FBI. You'll be arrested before you reach the elevator. My father searched my face for the daughter he used to bully. She wasn't there. His hand shook as he signed. My mother signed, silently weeping. Sarah signed last, staring at the table as her future dissolved into ink. I took the folder, stood, and walked out. I breathed city air like it was the first real oxygen I'd had in years. I blocked their numbers before I reached my car. The aftermath was swift. Sarah was fired the next day after I anonymously forwarded the audit discrepancies to her board. She became unhireable. My parents moved into a small rental 2 towns over. I sold the house 3 months later. The profit paid off the debt they'd stolen and funded my move to a new city where nobody knows my last name. I'm alone now, but not lonely. I wake up in a house I own with credit that's mine and a life no one can liquidate. Have you ever had to become the villain in their story just to survive in yours? Tell me in the comments. And if you're listening from somewhere you feel stuck, tell me what time it is there. I want to see how far this story travels.